On the second anniversary of those attacks, let's revisit October 7, 2023, the day that changed Israel forever. Earlier this year, I traveled to Israel and visited some of the places that came under some of the biggest attacks and witnessed the worst massacres by Hamas exactly 2 years ago. The Nir Oz Kibbutz and the site of the Nova Music Festival in areas bordering Gaza, where hundreds of Israelis and some foreign nationals were butchered and scores of others kidnapped and taken to Gaza as hostages. I spoke to some of the survivors of the horrific attacks, hostages who were later released, families of those killed, relatives of some of the hostages, as well as IDF soldiers who were shot by the Hamas terrorists and who later went to Gaza to fight the war with Hamas. They recounted in chilling detail the horrors of October 7, which changed their lives forever. Watch my ground reports from southern Israel. October 7, 2 years on. It was late January this year when I visited Israel. As part of a delegation from India invited by an Israeli NGO called Sharaka. A brief, fragile ceasefire was in place after 1.5 years of what had been a bloody war in Gaza. I visited two of the sites of the horrific October 7 massacre that was unleashed by Hamas in southern Israel. The Nir Oz Kibbutz and the venue of the Nova Music Festival in the border community of Reem. Hundreds of people were killed at these sites that still bear the scars of that chilling and unprecedented attack. Many others were taken hostage. Some have died in captivity in the last 2 years. Some others are still being held captive in Gaza. At the Nir Oz Kibbutz, I met Yat, who was taken hostage by Hamas that fateful day. During her 54 days in captivity, Yat lived in the belief that her husband too was being held captive, and that she would finally be reunited with him and her 3 children if she emerged from the nightmare alive. But when she was released, close to 2 months later, she realized to her horror that her husband had been killed on October 7 in their own home. Being alive and able to see her children again was now a bittersweet feeling for Yat. The sense of loss overbearing, the pain of the tragedy searing and seemingly impossible to overcome. Yat described to me her days in captivity. How she spent the first few days with a Palestinian family in Gaza who took care of her. Later, she was held captive with another hostage from the kibbutz in an adjacent building as Hamas gunmen stood guard round the clock. Yat told me that on her release and return to Israel, she refused to meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. She believed that the Prime Minister's meetings with the released hostages and the families of those still in captivity were only publicity exercises designed for political gains, and she wanted no part in it.
I am at the Nir Oz Kibbutz in southern Israel, which was attacked on the 7th of October. At least 50 people were killed by the Hamas terrorists who came in that morning. Here with me is Liat, a very brave woman who lost her husband in those horrific attacks on the 7th of October. She was taken hostage and spent 54 days in captivity in Gaza. Liat, thank you so much for bringing us here and sharing your painful story with us. Can you very briefly tell us when the terrorists came in that Saturday morning? What happened? What was it like?
Well, thank you for coming here to hear our stories, as was saying. And the attack started at 6:30 Saturday morning. I was taken hostage at around 12 o'clock. I know from other people telling me that the attack ended and people were rescued from their houses only towards 7 or 8 in the evening. And I can tell you that nothing in my experiences over my life prepared me for something like that. It was horrific. It was like hearing a war movie happening outside my window. I didn't have a very good idea of what was happening. I freaked out that it was very scary.
You told us there are 200 homes here. 196 of those were attacked. Most of them burnt down. And people were butchered in the most vicious, brutal manner. What more can you tell me about?
People were murdered. People who went outside to fight, like my husband, and over 70 people were taken hostage from our community, which is a small community. Only 400 people before October 7th. And so it's terrible. And this community was devastated physically, and also the people suffered huge.
You paid a very heavy price, Liat. You lost your husband that day, and you didn't even know it for a long time. You thought he was a hostage. Tell us about that.
I could imagine that something had happened to him. He was outside fighting, and it was obvious that it was very bad what was happening outside. But I had no idea what it did. And when I was released from captivity, I was told that he became and the whole time. But keeping outside, and that something that was
And that 54 days later, you learned that you had actually lost your hubby. Your kids were away that day. What were those 54 days of captivity like to you, Sikiang?
The whole time I was, for the most part, very worried about my children. My good son worked here. My daughter was away. And so I was very worried about them and about my husband, about my pets. And also there was a lot of time to think. So I thought about the kibbutz, about the houses. I wondered if my house had burned completely down or something could be saved. I thought a lot about how my children were coping. I knew that my daughter was alive, so I brought her.
Because she was away. But how were you treated in captivity? Did you think you would end up dead too?
There were times that I thought that I might be killed, murdered. But for the most part, I was treated with reasonable respect and reasonable conditions. And for me, the major difficulty and the thing that kept me busy the most was project. That what kept you going? That kept me going, and that was the thing that was the most difficult.
And the most difficult. You spend that time with a Palestinian family. Can you tell us about that?
I was with a Palestinian family in the beginning, and afterwards with 2 Palestinian men, not a family. Again, they kept, their message was that it was their job to keep us healthy, to keep us safe. They were afraid that people would break into the house and hurt us. And so they kept repeating that it was their job to keep us safe, us healthy, and so there's a hostage.
You were, in that sense, one of the lucky ones, because many hostages have been killed. What do you think of the ceasefire that's commenced? And the hostages now being returned?
I think that is the most important thing at the moment. It has been ever since the war broke out, ever since October 7th. I think that the most important thing is to bring the hostages home and to have a hostage deal, and then to find the permanent solution to the conflict here.
You said you refused to meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Why?
Because I think that most of the meetings that he had with hostage families, with returned hostages, were very for media purposes, very political, and I did feel that it be an essential take me away. If I meet with him, if I had met with him, I would have wanted it to be for an honest conversation, and for me to be able to further my objectives with that meeting, and I just didn't feel that I would do any of that.
I know that this is something that's perhaps impossible to get over. Would you say that you've managed to recover to some extent from this trauma? Or is this something that's just going to stay with you for the rest of your life? It's just impossible to erase from your mind, right?
Yes, and I don't think that's what needs to be done. I think it's just but it's what I had to do in my life is to learn how to live with this experience. So I can.
You're a very brave woman. Thank you for bringing us here and for sharing your ordeal with us. Thank you to us. Sama.
Yat took us to her home that was burnt down on October 7 and described in chilling detail the moments when the Hamas terrorists barged in and told her, "You coming with us, pack a bag." She says she had no clue what she needed to pack for and what lay ahead. The moment left her frozen and paralyzed. All she left her home with were the clothes on her back, unable to even find her glasses as she was captured and taken away amid unimaginable chaos, mayhem and desperate screams of her helpless fellow kibbutz residents. At least 50 people were butchered at the Nir Oz Kibbutz that morning. There were 200 homes here. 196 of those were attacked, looted, and then burnt down. Yat tells us most of the residents' belongings reduced to ashes. The kibbutz they once called home is now unrecognizable. It's a veritable ghost town, with the survivors never being able to find the courage to return. The memories of that horrific day burnt into their minds for life. The scars impossible to erase. Yat showed us around the kibbutz, describing the way of life here. This was once a place where an entire community lived together and thrived. Now it's practically a ruin. The residents too scared to return. As we walked around the kibbutz with Yat, understanding how the residents once lived here in peace and harmony, we saw all around us telltale signs of the attacks that changed their lives forever. House after house burnt down. Rows and rows of pictures of those who once called this place their home. They were either slaughtered that day or taken hostage. Their loved ones carrying the unbearable burden of the pain every single day. Amidst the ruins of the homes, we saw flags, signs and posters, many of which bear angry messages for Netanyahu and his government.
We are at the Nir Oz Kibbutz, which was attacked on the 7th of October by Hamas terrorists. These are houses that were burnt down by them. These are pictures of people who were either killed in those attacks or were taken hostage. In fact, the posters with the red signs are of people who were all slaughtered that day. And you see this poster here. It says Netanyahu addressing the Prime Minister of Israel. The blood of our family is on your hands.
This kibbutz, now a memorial to those who lost their lives or were captured on October 7, bears testimony to how lives and entire families were cruelly torn apart. Next, I visited the site of the Nova Music Festival in the border community of Reem, which also came under attack on October 7. This place witnessed one of the worst massacres that day. The Nova Music Festival was held in the Reem area near the Gaza border as part of the Sukkot holiday celebrations in 2023. In the early morning hours of October 7, Hamas terrorists stormed the festival grounds, murdering 378 people and kidnapping dozens more. One moment, young people gathered here were dancing with joy. The next moment, they were lying among the dead or running for their lives as the heavily armed Hamas terrorists began firing indiscriminately and chasing terrified partygoers in all directions. It took over 6 hours for any rescue teams to arrive. All that the people here could do was to make frantic calls for help, run for their lives, and send text messages to their loved ones, as many of them realized that they may never see them again. I met Tomer, a young IDF soldier who was among the partygoers at the Nova festival that day. He was shot by the Hamas gunman as he tried to escape as part of the last group of people who managed to get out of here alive. Tomer did not wait to get over the trauma of the attack, being shot and watching the brutal massacre of his friends. Weeks later, he decided to join his IDF colleagues in the Gaza war and fight for his country. But there was another tragedy in store. Tomer lost his brother, also an IDF soldier, in the war. He spoke to me about the ordeal he and his family had to face and how he found the strength to carry on. Tomer also described the horrors of that day and how, despite repeated calls to the police seeking help, he got no answers. All the police told him was to wait for the rescue teams to arrive. For hours together, there wasn't a single rescue team in sight.
I am at the Nova Music Festival site, one of the worst sites of the massacre that occurred on the 7th of October in southern Israel, and joining me now is a very special person, Tomer. He is not only a survivor of the Nova massacre, he is in the army, he has served in Gaza, and unfortunately he lost his brother in the war. Tomer, thank you so much for talking to us and sharing your story with us. Could you please share with us briefly what it was like when those Hamas terrorists came in? People were here just enjoying music. They suddenly started attacking, killing, butchering people. What was that moment like? Nobody saw it coming.
This was a crazy situation. In one moment, all the fun, the smiles, and the people faces, it's become to people that run away and screaming, and a lot of injured people, and a lot of panic. And this is become to, I don't know how to call this, just a traumatic event and a scared event. And it was crazy.
Did you think you were also going to die like so many others who were slaughtered that day?
Yes. My whole escape, I escaped for 6 hours. And every minute in my escaping, I go to die. I escaped there all the way out from the area party.
It took you 6 hours to escape, and I'm guessing you would have lost a lot of friends that day.
Yes.
Does that day still keep you awake at night?
Look, right now, I have night that I wake up and I don't know, and all the events come to my mind, and there is night that not. Right now I'm still dealing with these events. Every day, every night, every time.
Tomer, you actually joined the military days after this attack. You've served in Gaza and you lost your brother in the war and also many members of your unit. Can you tell us about that? It's been one tragedy after another.
Yes, it feels like every time I get a more harder box to my face. First I threw the Nova, I think okay, through the Nova, I can right now to relax, but no, my unit joined to the war and I need to go with them because I don't can to be outside to Gaza when they are inside Gaza. And after my unit team step on the bomb and I lost my friend Shalev, I think that I can to feel more suffer from this. But after I get out from Gaza, I actually lost my little brother Noam, and then I think to myself why God want for me and why I deserve all of this event. But with the time, I actually got it and understanding that I need to stand on my feet every day and to tell my story and to tell about the people that I lost for my soul and for their families, if this my friends and if this is my family.
I'm so sorry for your loss, Tomer. You lost your brother in the war. What do you think as a soldier of the ceasefire that has been announced?
Again?
What do you think of the ceasefire that has been announced?
Actually, I don't know. I hope that this will be over, but I don't know.
You don't know. How difficult do you think it will be for you and other victims to overcome the trauma of the 7th of October?
Again, I don't...
How difficult will it be for you and others like you to overcome the trauma of 7th October?
To come to where?
To overcome the trauma
להתגבר על הטראומה.
מה עוזר לנו להתגבר על הטראומה? So what was help to me to overcome on the trauma? It's sharing my story, tell people, myself, my story, my people that I love, that I lost, and really help to other people. If it means to volunteer in hospitals or I was in the humanitarian volunteering in Tanzania, in Africa, with children. A lot of things to do something for the other people.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Thank you so much.
Another young IDF soldier talked to us about why he believes Israel continues to survive even after decades of strife in the region and in the face of the existential crisis that it is constantly faced with.
And when he said that, screamed it from his lungs, everyone started working like ants because they knew that what happened in Gaza could now possibly be up north. And this is not a new thing for us, that when something bad happened, something more bad could happen. Like for example, when they talk to us about earthquake, but also that they can use this, that we are having an earthquake to invade us. So you shouldn't worry about the earthquake, you should worry about the earthquake and how to clean the road so tanks can go to the border. Crazy. It's like fascinating how this country works and still standing and will stand no matter what. And it's not his spirit, this soldier like that we met, his spirit, lost friends, lost a brother, everything that he has encountered. But he's not unique. He's unique to other people. For us, he's normal. He's normal because God challenged him because he is worthy of challenging, you know? Because that's why it doesn't surprise me that he's so strong and he can smile and go help other people and make his unit when his unit sees him, I promise you guys, he gives them so much energy to keep going forward. And that's my message to you. And for my behalf, not as a soldier, not all of this, from my behalf, I believe that Israel is the solution to the problem. The solution to a problem sometimes is within the problem. Because Israel is made out of Arabs, out of Jewish, out of Christians, out of Muslims, out of Jews, out of Cherkess people, Russian, not Russian, everyone. It's a melting pot for everyone.
This site of the Nova Music Festival is now a makeshift memorial, keeping alive the memory of those who were cruelly snatched away. As we take a walk around these rows of pictures of the victims and hostages, with flowers, candles, soft toys, and other little things strewn all around them by loved ones and even complete strangers, we hear loud trance music blaring from a speaker placed nearby. A tribute to the young people who died during an electronic music festival, and a haunting reminder of the scenes of dance, music, smiles, and joy that turned into a carnage that Israel would never forget. The next day, I visited a bustling market square in the heart of Tel Aviv, which has been rechristened the Hostage Square. This is where scores of Israelis come every day to pay their tributes to those who were either killed in captivity in Gaza or are still being held in the enclave. The daily stream of visitors include families and friends of the hostages, total strangers, as well as tourists. At the Hostage Square, we met Efrat Machikawa. Her 80-year-old uncle, Gadi Moses, had been taken hostage by Hamas. Moses was among the oldest people taken captive. His family was constantly living in fear. Efrat had visited the square almost every day since October 7 to express solidarity with the other hostages' families and to build pressure on the Israeli government to bring back the hostages. As Efrat was speaking to us about the ordeal of the hostages' families, she received a phone call that changed everything. Her prayers had finally been answered. After 481 days in captivity, her uncle, Gadi Moses, was finally being released the next day. He was among 3 Israeli hostages and 5 Thai hostages who were being released as part of a deal between Israel and Hamas, brokered by multiple international negotiators.
The 4 of them. Efrat, his partner, was murdered on the way. It's a complicated story because one helicopter passed and shot, so she was shot from the helicopter. But to us, she was murdered by the Hamas in the hands of her daughter, while other terrorists came and took the children. Her daughter had to decide what to do to be with her dying mom, so she of course chose to run after the kids because she didn't want to let go. So the one and the kids were kidnapped, and Gadi was kidnapped, and Margaret was kidnapped, and it was just horrible because in Kibbutz Nir Oz, as you heard, more than 100 were either brutally murdered or kidnapped. We had no idea what's going on, no idea, and still there are 29 people.
As she hung up the phone, Efrat burst into tears and embraced each one of us, knowing how lucky she and her family were, unlike so many others who would never see their loved ones again, as scores of hostages have died in Hamas captivity. She couldn't be more grateful that her uncle was finally returning home, alive. We too were overwhelmed by that powerful moment, each one of us choked with emotion and grateful to have witnessed the joy and immeasurable relief of a grieving family. The following day, I visited this border area in southern Israel. Barely 2 miles from Gaza, the site of the devastating and crippling war that continues to rage 2 years on, leaving in its wake thousands of Palestinian civilians, including innocent women and children, dead. And over 2 million people trapped in an endless and cruel conflict, staring at starvation, hunger, and possible death every single moment of their hapless existence. Two vastly different worlds on either side of the border, while people on both sides have suffered immensely over the years and decades as they both continue to fight for their identities and very survival. The tragedy of Gaza over the last 2 years, which many are now calling a genocide and the annihilation of an entire people, has eclipsed by miles the horrific events of October 7, which triggered a war so devastating it will go down in history as one of the cruelest and most catastrophic and dehumanizing wars since World War II. A war and a human tragedy that should be on the conscience of the entire international community and each one of us.